Welcome back. Well, South Africans have been telling the finance minister what they want. Topping their priorities are the reductions in VAT and fuel prices. That's certainly something that's been top of mind. Now, the Free Market Foundation has weighed in on these reports that the Energy Department is considering capping the price for 93 unleaded petrol. It says that this is a recipe for disaster. Now, the Foundation's Martin van Staden joins us here in studio. Martin, surely the Energy Department is going to give us some good news. What's there to be concerned about? Talk to us.
The problem is that this, like most government policies, only sounds good and it looks great on paper. But when you actually get into the economic principles underlying the whole thing, you can see that there are going to be massive unintended consequences. Now, the thing about a market price is that it indicates signals to the economy. If it's a low price, it usually says that a resource is in abundant quantities. And if it's a high price, it usually says that's a luxury resource, it's scarce. Now, if we fix the petrol price, the production side of things will get the consumers will get a signal that petrol is abundant in South Africa, which is not the case, and we will be fuel will be flying out of our pumps at a very great rate, especially for 93 unleaded petrol, but then it will not be replaced. So that is the first scenario. But the second scenario, which is probably more likely, is that government will use taxpayers' money to cover the deficit between what they used to get for fuel. Now that it's capped, they don't get any more. So at the end of the day, South African taxpayers will still be paying what the market wants for fuel. But there is a much better way for government to lower the fuel price, and that is to simply eliminate the fuel levies. Now, the market price for fuel right now is closer to around 10 Rand and 10 cents, whereas we're paying, I believe, last I checked, 16 Rand 50 or something. That 6 Rand 50 extra is going directly to the pocket of government in the form of the general road levy, general fuel levy, and the road accident fund levy. So I heard earlier that there's going to be a 6-cent increase in the petrol price. About two of those cents go directly to the government's pocket. So if government is truly serious about lowering the fuel price, it can eliminate these levies, and we can pay around 10 Rand a litre for fuel.
Surely government is aware of these unintended consequences of putting a cap on some of these petrol grades, but have you been engaging with them? Are they aware of these unintended consequences?
Oh, surely, yes. So this is economics 101. If you control a price, if you fix a price, there will be either surpluses, rarely, but more usually shortages. And yes, we have been engaging government, but as with most things, when you ask the government to step back and pull its hand out of the cookie jar, the government usually says no, and that's probably also what we're going to hear later today in the budget speech. So no, I would be surprised if government takes our advice and eliminates the road accident fund levy and the general fuel levy. No, they're going to fix the price, say, look at us, we're doing something.
Because that's the question I want to come to, that do you think that there's good intent from government, or are they doing this merely to appease the people of South Africa ahead of a crucial election next year?
Well, it's probably the latter. Because government always tells South African taxpayers to tighten their belts. Every budget speech, we hear the same story, we need to start saving, but government itself never tightens its belt. I think you mentioned a bit earlier the massive salaries that we're paying out to our civil servants. We have about 3 million people in the civil service, much bigger per capita civil service than most other countries that we have here in South Africa. So government is very desperate for money. So it's definitely not going to eliminate the extras, the surcharges we pay on things for fuel that go directly to its pocket. So it's going to say we're helping, but in fact it's probably just to appease the unions, for example, to say, okay, we're not going to cut out civil service jobs, and instead we're going to get the money elsewhere, and that is invariably going to come out of our pockets.
And so the question then is, if they do seriously mean well, why don't they scrap some of what you're saying is possible for them to scrap, to lower the burden or to lessen the burden?
No, exactly. I mean, the road accident fund is in massive debt. Last I checked, it has about 200 billion rands debt. It's I think it has a billion rands of operating revenue a year, all of which is going to pay out claims. Virtually no money for the organization itself. And then, of course, there's a general fuel levy, which theoretically goes to fixing and maintaining roads and building roads. But the perverted part of that is that if you are someone who takes a taxi from Soweto to Johannesburg, you are paying for roads in Cape Town and in East London. So there's no real economic efficiency attached to the general fuel levy. So these things really need to be eliminated. Leave road construction and maintenance to the market, and replace the road accident fund with a voucher system rather than simply paying tens of billions of rands that government doesn't actually have.
Very quickly, you're suggesting this is a government trying to pacify burdened South Africans?
Yes, I don't think government particularly cares. I mean, we had a tax increase very recently when government knows wealthy taxpayers are leaving and poor taxpayers are simply not coping anymore. So there is definitely a detachment here between what's actually happening on the ground and what government in its ideological goals really wants.